While the great majority of cargo voyages end successfully, research by the UK P&I Club reveals that many do not. Cargo claims result in 4 out of every 10 major P&I payouts. A spectacular example hits the headlines now and then, but much greater losses mount up far from the glare of publicity. Cargo Matters, the first video in this series, showed how commercial pressures give rise to mistakes. No one on container ships needs to be told about pressure. Tough competition means schedules that get tighter all the time, faster loading rates, bigger ships, and smaller crews. But working with containerized cargo is different from any other in one respect. In the previous videos, we saw how ship staff could prevent many claims by carefully checking the quality and quantity of cargo. That's something that isn't so easy with containers. But although the cargoes you carry are always out of sight, you can't afford to let them be out of mind.
This is the magic box of the 60s and the 70s. The new standard range of international containers which are rapidly changing the whole concept of general cargo handling throughout the world.
The magic box certainly revolutionized shipping. But, with apologies to the filmmakers of the time, it didn't live up to all its promises. Damage to cargo was supposed to be a thing of the past, but 30 years on, we've learned the hard way that simply putting cargo into a metal box doesn't guarantee it will arrive in good condition. That's because, as the container era dawned, it eclipsed a traditional skill, the stevedores.
Number 30, 1 gun.
The days when cargo was stowed by men who lived and worked within sight and sound of the sea are long gone. Today, most cargo is stowed far inland by people who have no idea what the sea can do. No wonder UK P&I Club research shows that many claims against ships turn out to be caused or made worse by bad packing. It's a sobering thought that nowhere in the world is it required for a container packer to be trained or qualified in any way. That's why, in a new initiative to help raise standards, the club has supplemented this video with one especially for shippers.
Many cargoes are ruined by poor packing of containers. Maybe it's because those boxes look so reassuring. A bit like a safe. But that safe can turn into an oven, a freezer, or a sauna.
Oh!
And as we've seen, guarantees its contents a white-knuckle ride.
Topics in the shipper's video include choosing the right type of container and checking its condition, making a packing plan, packing and unpacking, security, the importance of proper labelling, declaring weight accurately, and providing clear carriage instructions.
It is heat sensitive, so obviously would you take this into consideration when you're stowing it?
So how many pallets are damaged like this altogether?
Unfortunately, many shippers could do better. But they aren't the only ones. 3 categories of major container cargo claims cause 60% of UK club members' losses. Physical damage, wet damage, and containers overboard. The average loss was $362,000 US. This video focuses on the part ship owners, officers and crew can play in reducing this burden.
I live in the chief office. Wow.
Loo fa uti.
dama fa fàtte suma kayit yi for me. Ah, waaye léegi laa jógee sama
The degree to which officers are involved in loading and stowing containers varies widely. On a small vessel like this, they may be very hands-on. Judgments about stowage positions may be made on the spot, according to the weight and type of container, its discharge port, and anything that might have been declared about its contents. It may be necessary to supervise the work of stevedores and riggers who may not be familiar with the ship or concerned about its schedule. And it may be necessary for the crew to keep the lifting and lashing gear in working order. It's a different story on a mainline ship like this. The foundations of the stowage plan may be laid anywhere in the world by coordinators with a window on the entire voyage. They generally specify stowage positions for temperature-controlled cargo, dangerous goods, and heavy or out-of-gauge items. But for general-purpose containers, they allocate a block of stowage space for each port of call. It's the terminal planners who complete the jigsaw, assigning a particular slot to each general-purpose container that's booked to be loaded. Terminal staff check that these bay plans are followed accurately as containers come aboard one every 40 seconds. The ship calls here regularly, so the stevedores and riggers know the ropes. Which is just as well, because there are too many for one officer to keep an eye on. And there's so much lashing gear, it's sent ashore for maintenance. So, 2 quite different experiences. But all ships that carry containers have one thing in common. They all suffer cargo losses. To the extent that automation and time pressures allow, the best way to prevent this drain on owners and charterers' resources is active management of the loading, stowing and carriage of containers.
Jean-Paul? Jean-Paul? Tu vas voir le second maître?
Owners and charterers have a vital role to play as well. A stowage planner's work is only as good as the data he has to go on. That's why owners and charterers must make sure he knows the ship's stack and weight limits well before the ship arrives to load. The consequences of not declaring weight limits or deliberately ignoring them for commercial reasons can be serious or even tragic. Container racking limits can be exceeded, and lashing systems, hatch covers and tank tops overstressed, causing stows to collapse and threatening the safety of ship and crew. Masters will need no reminding that whoever may direct the loading and stowing, the master himself is always responsible for the vessel's safety. Under SOLAS regulations, every ship must carry a cargo securing manual, approved by its flag state. It must be up to date and in a language officers and crew can understand, so that all may become familiar with it. The securing system is a system and can fail if parts of it are faulty, missed out, or incorrectly used. Look at this. Using broken double-stacking cones as singles renders the system useless. If defective fittings are allowed to remain on board, they're bound to get mixed up with serviceable equipment. Examine all fittings regularly, and at the first sign of failure, get rid of them. Whether the lashing equipment is maintained on board or ashore, make sure it's inspected and repaired in accordance with manufacturer's guidelines. The motion of the ship is enough to unlock worn twist locks. They must be repaired or replaced, and keep an eye open for rogue fittings, not originally part of the ship's equipment. Mixing left and right locking twist locks in the same stow is a recipe for disaster. Galvanized rods require no maintenance, but should be examined regularly for corrosion and damage caused by rough handling. If the threaded parts of bridge fittings or turnbuckles are bent, they should be replaced. Don't overlook seized up securing points or corroded base sockets. It's a mistake to assume the fittings you need will be available wherever you sail. Carry spares and order replacements well in advance. And if your ship is fitted with any lifting gear, make sure it's ready to work safely at a moment's notice.
These are the stowage instructions from the central stowage coordinator in London.
Yes. And you'll get me the computer disk.
You'll get your computer disk by about 1500.
Even though container stowage is often planned ashore, the chief officer should not permit loading to begin until he has reviewed the plan thoroughly. He will make certain that any dangerous goods will be segregated as required by the IMDG Code, national legislation, and the ship's dangerous goods document of compliance. He will make certain that reefer containers will be stowed only where they can be connected to the ship's electrical supply and reached for inspection. Or, in the case of porthole containers, connected to cold air ducts or cooling water if necessary.
I need it all changed, please.
He will want to be sure that non-containerized cargo has been given a protected stow.
Better be safe than sorry.
He will make certain that stack weight limits have not been exceeded. Heavy containers should be stowed in low tiers because late arrivals often end up on deck, possibly at the top of the stow, however heavy they may be. Excess weight in outboard stacks is particularly hazardous. Remember that stevedores make mistakes. Many cargo claims start with a container being stowed in the wrong bay. Serious losses would be prevented if ship staff routinely monitored the stow and made sure errors were corrected. Physical damage accounts for more than 20% of cargo losses. Obvious signs of an accident must be recorded and pointed out to shore staff. Claims for wet damage are an equal drain on owners' resources. If ship's personnel always reported any puncture